I'm a strong believer in the notion that fortune favors the bold. Would you agree with me? This past Mashujaa weekend, I was driving down to Meru County. This place is known as the breadbasket of our country. Even if the rest of Kenya is facing a drought, this region is always green. I used the Nanyuki Road. I prefer it because it's straighter, it's less hilly, so it's an easier drive than the Embu side. How many of you have used the Nanyuki Road? So you'll know it's a scenic drive. When I got to Narumoru, something caught my eye on the right side. At first, I thought it was a huge dark rain cloud. I looked closer and I realized it was enveloping my entire field of vision, covering the entire horizon. That's when I realized what it was. The slopes of a mountain. And not just any mountain, but a mountain that traverses 5 counties. This towering, majestic phenomenon that our country was named after, Mount Kenya. I couldn't quite see the peaks because they were covered by the clouds. Just to let you know how high this mountain is, Peak Lenana, the 3rd highest peak, rests at 16,000 feet above sea level. That's 2,000 feet higher than the maximum altitude that a Cessna 172 aircraft can fly at. When you see it with your naked eye, you'll realize why the people that lived around it called it God's resting place. When I saw it, I nearly stopped driving because I had an epic realization. 6 years ago, this month, I had been up there among the clouds. How many of you have even attempted to climb Mount Kenya? Let's see those hands. I admire you because it's no easy feat. When you do something that's physically challenging, yes, you develop physical strength, but something very interesting happens. You also develop mental strength. And the resilience and grit that I acquired when I was on that mountain helped me conquer many small hills in my life over the next few years. There are 3 main reflections that stuck with me. I'll share them with you. The first is on seizing opportunities. I remember when my brother first presented the idea to me. He casually strolled into the room and he said, "What are you doing next month?" The whole month? No, just the first week. I don't think I'm doing anything. What do you have in mind? Let's go climb Mount Kenya. What? Keep in mind that he is a chain smoker, right? He's tried to climb this mountain twice, and both times he failed to reach the summit. I was terrified of this mountain from his experiences. And to make it worse, I had never climbed a mountain in my life. Not even Longonot, not even a small hill. So I did what those of us who are faced with a scary prospect would do. I said, nope. But there's a saying, before you say no, think about the possible outcomes of saying yes. And so I ruminated over this idea for the next few days. And a week later, I walked up to my brother and I said, I'm in. Let's do it. Life-changing opportunities don't always present themselves in convenience. There's always an element of uncertainty, of risk, of discomfort. But fortune favors the bold, so it's necessary to take calculated risks and seize opportunities whenever they present themselves. But the problem with that is, when you seize opportunities, at some point, you're bound to hit an obstacle. And it's human instinct to say, aha, this is why I shouldn't have taken that risk. This is when the people around you say, I told you so. It is at this point that many of us bow out of the race. We give up. But that's my second reflection to you. Don't give up. Keep going. Push your limits. I remember the second day of our trek up the mountain. There's a particular section from Camp Old Moses to Shipton's camp. It's just 13 kilometers. Now, I know many of you might have walked this distance, maybe even ran 13 kilometers. Doesn't sound like much. But keep in mind that this is 13 kilometers through harsh weather conditions, rugged terrain, uphill, and in thin air. Just to let you know how thin the air was, I'd like all of you in the audience to take a deep breath. Go ahead, take a deep breath. I hope you enjoyed it. Because up there on the mountain, that breath is impossible. Every single breath you take feels like an incomplete breath. In fact, the number one danger when climbing a mountain is not slipping and falling off a cliff. It's that your brain and other organs won't get enough oxygen, leading to a state called hypoxia. I had a rucksack on with the bare essentials, just some water and a change of clothes, barely 2 to 3 kilos. But when your muscle tissues are not getting enough oxygen, 2 to 3 kilos weighs on you like 20 to 30 kilos. To make it worse, if you have any medical conditions, when you're up there on the mountain, they usually manifest. I remember I had peptic ulcers at the time, and on the second day, the pain began. There were times trekking through that mountain when the hailstones are beating down on your head and your neck and your back, and your face and your hands are freezing, and water is seeping into your hiking boots, putting you at risk of hypothermia, and your body is on the verge of giving up. It's at this point that your mind is truly tested, as mine was. But I saw something that day. I saw a few pebbles lined up near the path. They were piled in the shape of a pyramid. These serve as markers to remind us that even though we are in the wilderness, we're going in the right direction. But it did something different for me. It reminded me that other people have walked this way before. They've made it, they've survived, they've lived, and so can I. And so even though my mind and body were numb, this one constant reminder kept me going. It's also good not to go alone. Share your challenges if you can. The very fact that there were people walking in front of me, behind me, gave me an extra surge of strength. In fact, one of them even had the medication for my ulcers. So don't go alone. If you hit an obstacle in your life, reach out to those around you for assistance. The problem with facing obstacles and dealing with all these challenges is that sometimes we forget to live in the moment, to enjoy the moment. I remember when we finally got to the top, Peak Lenana. What's the first thing you would have done? Gaze upon the beauty of Kenya? Look upon the rest of the country from the rooftop? Take a selfie with your hiking buddies? Well, I took off my jacket, folded it into a pillow, neatly placed it on the side, and I went to sleep. A few minutes later, I woke up to shouts from the guides. There was a storm cloud approaching, and if we get caught up in the cloud, it would make our descent dangerous. So we had to leave. So I couldn't enjoy the view. I couldn't savor this triumphant moment. Don't be like me. Enjoy the moment. Remember when you once prayed and wished so hard to be where you are right now, to have the things you now have. Don't take them for granted. And so these are my reflections. Seize opportunities when they present themselves. Don't give up when you hit an obstacle. Don't go alone. And don't forget to live in the moment. Now, a final story about someone you know that followed this formula. This young boy used to run to school and back 3 kilometers every day. When he grew up in 2015, 10 kilometers into the Berlin Marathon, the soles of his shoes failed him. He ran the remaining 32 kilometers in this condition. By the end of the race, even though he had blisters and bleeding feet, he won the race. Last year, he was crowned the world record holder for the marathon, being the fastest marathon runner in the world. You know who I'm talking about, the man of the moment. What's his name? Eliud Kipchoge. He was recently crowned the first human being to run 42.195 kilometers in less than 2 hours. I remember where I was when Eliud crossed that finish line. Do you? I was at Karura Forest at a viewing party. I can still hear the crowd going into a frenzy the moment he touched that finish line tape. And we looked at the clock and we saw no 2 on it. It just had a 15940, like a winning lottery number. And all of a sudden, the whole world watching was filled with pride. Eliud seized the moment to be the first man to ever do this, the first human to ever do this. He did this back in 2017. There was a possibility that he could fail. And unfortunately, he failed by a mere 25 seconds. That was an obstacle. Most people would give up at this point. He didn't give up. He tried again this year. He didn't go alone. He had a good coach, a good sponsor, a supportive family, and a team. We know the famous pacemakers. Eliud did not forget to live in the moment. You saw him smile when he saw the finish line in the distance. You saw him point triumphantly at his supporters moments before he crossed the finish line. And when he finally crossed the finish line, you saw that warm embrace he gave his wife, Grace. This is a man who was present in the moment. Despite all that pressure, he was able to enjoy himself. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that not many of you have any intention of climbing Mount Kenya. I'm sure Eliud knows that not many of you plan on running a marathon, let alone in less than 2 hours. But we each have a mountain in our lives. What's your mountain? What's your 159? What's that one thing that you know you really want to do? That deep down you know you can do, but for one reason or the other you're talking yourself out of it. Here's your reminder from me to go after it, because fortune favors the bold. Thank you.